It is October 1985. The asphalt is cold. The air is heavy with the smell of unburnt hydrocarbons and the metallic tang of fear. You are strapped into a carbon fiber coffin, sitting with your feet forward of the front axle, surrounded by 40 gallons of highly volatile toluene-based fuel. Behind your head sits the violence of the Renault EF15B V6. It is idling, a chaotic, lumpy rhythm that shakes your vision. But when you drop the clutch and mash the throttle, that chaos organizes itself into a scream. 1,200 horsepower. In qualifying trim, the wastegates are welded shut. The boost pressure is dialed up to 5.5 bar. That is nearly 80 pounds of forced induction ramming air into 6 cylinders the size of soda cans. The acceleration is not a sensation of speed, it is a sensation of being physically assaulted. Your peripheral vision blurs, the blood drains from your legs and pools in your gut. You have 4 laps before the engine detonates or the gearbox shears its own teeth. This is the Formula One of the mid-1980s, the turbo era. It was a time of excess, of danger, and of mechanical brutality. Drivers were not athletes, they were pilots trying to tame dragons. And in the middle of this firestorm stood a 25-year-old Brazilian named Ayrton Senna da Silva. We remember Senna today as the mystic, the philosopher, the man who saw God in the apex of a corner at Eau Rouge. We remember the humanitarian who wept for the poor in Sao Paulo. But memory is a liar. Memory softens the edges. To understand how Ayrton Senna became a god, you have to understand the monster he was willing to become in 1985. You have to look at the blood on his hands. Not physical blood, but the cold, calculated destruction of another man's career. This is the story of the veto. To understand the crime, you first have to understand the weapon, the Lotus 98T. In 1985, Team Lotus was a faded giant. The legendary Colin Chapman was dead. The team was operating out of Ketteringham Hall, a stately English manor that smelled of old wood and high-octane fuel. They were no longer the innovators of the ground effect era. They were scrappers, fighting against the corporate might of McLaren Porsche and Williams Honda. Their car, the 98T, was a beautiful, terrifying beast. Painted in the black and gold livery of John Player Special, it remains perhaps the most aesthetically pleasing race car ever built. But beneath the gold pinstripes lay a fundamental weakness: reliability. The Renault Turbo engine was powerful, yes. In a straight line, it could pull the paint off a McLaren, but it was fragile. It was a glass hammer. The technology was moving too fast for the metallurgy. To make that kind of power, Renault was using pneumatic valve springs, using compressed nitrogen to close the valves because traditional steel springs would float and shatter at 12,000 RPM. It was space-age technology, bolted into a chassis that was still being welded by guys who smoked a pack a day. This fragility created a scarcity economy within the team. In a Formula One team, you have 2 cars, but you do not have infinite parts. In 1985, Renault could only supply a handful of Grade A engines per weekend. These were the units with the tightest tolerances, the best pistons, the perfectly balanced turbos. Then there were the Grade B engines, good but down on power by 20 or 30 horses. And then the Grade C engines, the mules used for Friday practice. Ayrton Senna knew the math. He was not just a driver, he was a human computer. He understood that if the team had 6 Grade A engines and there was only one #1 driver, that driver got all 6. He could blow 3 of them up in practice and still have 3 left for the race. But if there were 2 #1 drivers, if there was a super team, then you split the resources. 3 for you, 3 for him. And when you blow 2 up in practice, you're left with the scraps. You're left vulnerable. Senna looked at the grid in late 1985, and he saw the threat. Alain Prost at McLaren had Niki Lauda. Nigel Mansell at Williams had Nelson Piquet. These were super teams. They were stealing points from each other, warring internally, destroying their equipment in fratricidal battles. Senna decided he would not play that game. He would be the sun, and everyone else would be a satellite. Enter Derek Warwick. If you're American, you might not know the name Derek Warwick, but in Britain, in the mid-'80s, he was the heir apparent. He was the quintessential British racer, blonde, handsome, hard-working, stoic. He was a bricklayer's son who had fought his way up from stock cars. He didn't come from money, he came from grit. Warwick had spent 1984 and 1985 driving for the factory Renault team. He had been fast, often faster than his teammate Patrick Tambay, but the Renault team was collapsing under its own bureaucracy. Warwick was a man on a sinking ship looking for a lifeboat. And the lifeboat was Lotus. The fit was perfect. John Player's Special, the tobacco giant that bankrolled Lotus, was a British company. They were desperate for a British star to put on their billboards. They wanted a Union Jack on the podium. The marketing executives looked at the pairing: Ayrton Senna, the exotic Latin genius, and Derek Warwick, the British bulldog. It was a promoter's dream. It was the super team that would bring the Constructors' Championship back to Norfolk. By December of 1985, the deal was done. This is not a figure of speech. The contract was drawn up. The salary was agreed to. Derek Warwick had driven to the factory. He had met the mechanics. He had measured his seat. In his mind, he was a Lotus driver. He was finally going to have a car capable of winning the World Championship. He told his family. He told his friends. For a racing driver, this is the moment the dopamine hits the hardest. Not the win, but the security of knowing you have the machine to win. But while Warwick was measuring his seat, Ayrton Senna was in Brazil, reading the telexes. And Senna went cold. He didn't see a teammate. He saw a parasite. He saw a man who would eat into his engine allocation. He saw a man who was fast enough to qualify alongside him, fast enough to challenge him into the first corner, fast enough to force the team to split their strategy. Senna knew that Lotus did not have the manpower to run 2 cars at 100%. The mechanics were already overworked, sleeping 3 hours a night on greasy workshop floors. If you added another demanding top-tier driver to the mix, the system would break. The attention to detail would slip. A bolt left loose here, a sensor uncalibrated there. And Senna demanded perfection. So he flew back to England. Picture the scene. It is a gray, miserable winter day in Norfolk. Peter Warr, the team principal of Lotus, is sitting in his office. Warr is a tough man, a former soldier, a man who had managed Jochen Rindt and Emerson Fittipaldi. He is not easily intimidated. He has the pressure of a multi-million-dollar sponsor on his back, telling him to sign the Englishman. The door opens. Ayrton Senna walks in. He doesn't shout. He doesn't throw a helmet. Senna's voice, when he was serious, dropped an octave. It became soft, almost hypnotic. He looked at Peter Warr and delivered the ultimatum. If you sign Derek Warwick, I will not drive for Lotus. Silence. The room must have felt like a vacuum. Warr tries to reason with him. He explains the sponsor pressure. He explains that Warwick is a team player. He explains that they need a strong second driver to win the Constructors' Championship, the prize that pays the team's bills. Senna doesn't blink. He explains the physics of the situation. Lotus cannot support two top drivers. We do not have the parts, we do not have the people. If we fight each other, we destroy the tires, we destroy the fuel consumption, and Prost will win. If you want to be world champion, it must be me, alone. Warr is cornered. He knows Senna is the fastest driver on Earth. He knows that without Senna, Lotus is just a midfield team with a nice paint job. But he has a contract ready for Warwick. He has a promise to keep. Senna tightens the screws. He invokes a clause in his own contract, a clause Warr thought he would never use, a clause usually reserved for marketing rights, not personnel decisions. But Senna had read the fine print. Me or him, Peter. Choose. It wasn't a choice. It was a hostage negotiation. And Peter Warr, the hardened team boss, capitulated. He folded. Now comes the tragedy. The scene shifts to the reception area, or perhaps a phone call a few hours later. Derek Warwick is waiting for the final signature. He's ready to pop the champagne. Peter Warr has to deliver the news. Imagine the humiliation for the team boss. He has to admit that he's not in charge. He has to tell a top-tier professional driver that a 25-year-old kid has blocked him. Derek Warwick is stunned. He thinks it's a joke. Drivers don't pick drivers, management picks drivers. But the reality sinks in. The contract is dead. The seat is gone. Derek Warwick's career effectively ended that afternoon. Oh, he raced for many more years. He went to Brabham. He went back to Lotus years later when the car was a dog. He raced sports cars. He became a world champion in endurance racing. But his shot at the Formula One title, the chance to sit in a car that could take pole position at Monaco, that evaporated in Peter Warr's office because Ayrton Senna didn't want to share his toys. Instead of Warwick, Lotus hired Johnny Dumfries. Johnny Dumfries, the Earl of Dumfries, a Scottish aristocrat, a nice guy, a decent Formula 3 driver. But nobody, absolutely nobody, accused Johnny Dumfries of being as fast as Ayrton Senna. He was the perfect sacrificial lamb. When the 1986 season started, the difference was stark. Ayrton Senna was on pole position 8 times. He won races. He was fighting for the title until the very end. And Dumfries, he was fighting the car. He scored 3 points all season. 3. But here is the dark brilliance of Senna's calculation. Because Dumfries was slow, he didn't need the Grade A engines. He didn't need the new front wing development. He was happy to drive the mule. This meant that every single resource the Lotus factory could produce, the lightest pistons, the freshest turbochargers, the best engineers, flowed like a river to car number 12, Ayrton Senna's car. Senna had the entire team working for him. He created a fiefdom where he was the king and everyone else was a servant. And he needed it. The 1986 Lotus 98T was fast, but the Williams Honda of that year was a nuclear weapon. Mansell and Piquet had a better car, but because they were fighting each other, taking points off each other, stressing their team to the breaking point, Senna was able to slip through the gaps. He led the championship for a large part of the season in an inferior car, purely because he had total, undivided focus. The press hated him for it. The British media flayed him alive. They called him a coward for vetoing Warwick. They said he was afraid of a fair fight. Senna's response, he looked into the cameras, his dark eyes devoid of apology, and said, "I am here to win. If I have a teammate who pushes me, we crash, we lose points. This is not personal. This is business." It was a cold, hard logic that the romantic hearts of the 1980s fans couldn't accept. They wanted the chivalry of the 1950s. They wanted Fangio and Moss sharing a car. Senna gave them the cold corporate warfare of the 21st century. 20 years early. But let's look at the ledger. Let's look at the cost of that ego. Lotus finished third in the Constructors' Championship in 1986. If they had signed Warwick, a man who could have finished fourth or fifth every race, who could have backed Senna up, they likely would have challenged Williams for the title. The team sacrificed millions in prize money. They sacrificed their own glory to service the ambition of one man. It broke the spirit of the team. Peter Warr eventually left. The sponsor, JPS, left at the end of the year, replaced by the yellow of Camel. The super team never happened. Lotus began its slow, painful death spiral toward bankruptcy in the 1990s. You could argue that the rot started the day they let a driver dictate management policy. But for Senna, it was the making of him. That ruthlessness, that willingness to be the villain, is what separated him from the very good drivers. There are many fast drivers in history. Jean Alesi was fast, Gerhard Berger was fast, Derek Warwick was fast. But they were nice guys. They wanted to be liked. They wanted to play fair. Senna realized a fundamental truth about elite performance that is uncomfortable to admit. To be the absolute best, you cannot be a democrat. You must be a dictator. You must consume everything around you, people, resources, emotion, and convert it into forward motion. In 1985, Ayrton Senna looked at his reflection and decided he would rather be hated and holding a trophy than loved and holding a P2 certificate. He destroyed Derek Warwick's dream without losing a wink of sleep. He looked at a man he had known from the lower formulas, a man he had shared beers with, and he cut his throat professionally because it increased his own probability of winning by perhaps 5%. 5%. That was the value of a friendship. That was the value of loyalty. As we look back at the legend of Senna, we have to reconcile these two men. The man who pulled Eric Comas out of a burning car at Spa, risking his own life to save a fellow driver, that was Senna. But the man who vetoed Derek Warwick, condemning him to the midfield wasteland, that was also Senna. You cannot have the saint without the sinner. You cannot have the transcendent lapse at Monaco without the Machiavellian politics at Norfolk. They are the same engine, fueled by the same obsession. The question isn't whether Senna was right. History tells us he was. He won 3 world championships. Warwick won none. The numbers do not lie. The question is for you. We all want to succeed. We all want to be the best at what we do. But most of us have a line we will not cross, a moral boundary where we say, no, that is too much. I will not hurt him to help myself. Senna had no such line. The only line he cared about was the finish line. So as you sit there, judging the politics of a dead man, ask yourself this. If you had the chance to be the greatest in the world, not just good, but immortal, but you had to crush a friend's dream to do it, would you have the guts to pull the trigger? Senna did, and that is why his name is painted on the asphalt, and ours are written in chalk.